My experience was investing into distressed real estate, going to foreclosure auctions. That develops a certain level of due diligence and appropriate research that you need to do because you don't have the full picture in which you're investing into.
What is Agent Ignite? Are you wondering how you can make more money and create a competitive advantage for yourself and your clients in this ever-competitive real estate industry? Agent Ignite is the key to furthering your knowledge, establishing your expertise, and positioning yourself as a go-to expert. They deliver new and relevant knowledge so you can expand your clientele, close more deals, and ultimately increase income. Each month features a new guest speaker who will deliver on what is most relevant for your business. As a member of DMAR's Market Trends Committee, an avid champion for building wealth through real estate, and a self-proclaimed data geek, Nicole will share market trends and commentary that will add value to you and your clients. Staying up to date on industry statistics coupled with niche topics delivered by industry experts will help you motivate your buyers and sellers and make you more money. Sign up for the next Agent Ignite session at theruthteam.com/events.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Jake Harris. Jake is a co-founder of Harris Bay, a real estate investment company. Started out in commercial construction as an estimator, superintendent, and project manager, then transitioned into buying properties and rehabbing them for short-term profits. And over many years, Jake has been responsible for over $200 million plus across hundreds of transactions. Jake, talks a little bit about, a large fund they started. They purchased 1,200 assets in 23 states. It's pretty, it's so impressive, pretty impressive. He talks about how tech is disrupting how we used to do things and how that's helped him to do things like that, build teams around, different parts of the business so they can scale. And I love some of the quotes he brings up. And one, I want to tell you, he talks about you default to the level of your systems. And I want you to think through that a little bit, and even how goals are great for winning once, but how systems, are there to repeat the success, right? And so, big proponent for systems. I could not agree more. It's incredible his story, being a millionaire before 30, but losing it and coming back to where he is now. He offers you an amazing deal at the end too. He has this due diligence program or a course that he sells, but he is cutting that in half for the listeners of the show. So I hope that you will take advantage of that and take him up on that so you're doing proper due diligence. You're going to learn a lot from Jake today. Jake, welcome to the show. It's unfortunate that we were at the same mastermind a few weeks ago and didn't get to meet in person or even record an interview in person, but I'm grateful that you are here today. You're doing some big things in this business. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. Tell the listeners a little more about who you are and maybe your current business model, and we'll dive in.
Yeah, it was unfortunate we didn't get a chance. There was a lot of people running around and a lot of things to do. So my name's Jake Harris. I am the managing partner of a boutique private equity real estate company. We primarily invest in secondary and tertiary markets. I say that, and that used to mean like Austin. Now that's maybe kind of moved to a core market. We do commercial real estate. We do development. We do land assemblage. We buy distressed assets and reposition them. We've also in the past, I say past life, but it was really what kind of got the origin of starting this is put together a very big distressed opportunistic fund where we bought 1,200 assets in 23 states through a blind pool fund. Again, just kind of private equity models. And that's been kind of my experience was investing into distressed real estate, going to foreclosure auctions. That develops a certain level of due diligence and appropriate research that you need to do because you don't have the full picture in which you're investing into. You're buying something at the courthouse steps, not sight unseen. Sometimes I was like, I don't think we bought a whole lot of stuff sight unseen, but you didn't maybe get to see the insides of it. You didn't get all the financial disclosures, and that then requires a very, very intense level of research in a small window. So, and then obviously I wrote a book about that. And during COVID, when everything closed down, I wrote a book called Catching Knives. a guide to investing into distressed commercial real estate, I anticipated that there was going to be a bunch of distress.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to talking about that some. And I wanted to, you mentioned a large fund focused around distressed real estate, 1,200 assets in 23 states. That just sounds like a massive accomplishment to me. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in making something like that happen. Speak to some lessons learned around operating a fund of that size and maybe even acquiring, a number of assets like that.
Yeah, it is a crazy thing to do. I think probably having some naivety into it and a small team that just felt like we could do anything and everything was a challenge. But it's also technology is disrupting and eroding so many other things that it allowed us to put together comp sets. We kind of specially built a team. So I have some guys that head up my acquisitions from a title company. They used to do this for First American Title. They ran the distressed foreclosure kind of title department covering all of the state of California. And so they were seeing thousands of transactions a day. And I used to talk to him all the time. And so then I was like, hey, why don't you come join me and we can do this on a bigger scale, but still less volume than he was doing every single day. So what I say the lesson learned is real estate's a team sport. It is not how good I am or a collective individually one person, but if you can put together a team and then utilizing technology, where it is in a time and an era that has been rapidly disruptive and transformative, especially for the commercial real estate space. Residential, obviously, you see Zillow and some of these other iBuyers coming out and buying at scale, and it's a challenge. I think they lost billions of dollars. They could have just given me like at least a couple million, and I would have told them the model that they were building off of, a Zestimate, is going to guarantee to lose you billions of dollars. And they could have just paid me a couple $1 million and that would have solved their problem. You
would have given them that insight, right? Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. All that happened, over the last 2 years and what was thought to happen. And speak to, you wrote a book around it, right? And I appreciate your willingness to talk about that. Just put out there that, hey, maybe I, forecasted these things, but that didn't happen. Speak to some lessons learned there and maybe how you move forward with what you've learned, over the last COVID pandemic.
Yeah. And so there is, the book's theme was, distressed commercial real estate. There is actually distress in all markets at all times. The market goes up to the right. It doesn't mean that every deal works out. And so the fundamentals of investing in distressed real estate, using a team sport, putting together and doing your homework before that asset actually goes into distress, those are key factors that people should be learning, because with commercial real estate, they have some scarcity, even to the title of the book, Catching Knives. Some people may know this, others may not, but the term catching knives is a kind of a investing stock market term, is to avoid catching falling knives. And so usually what they say is just wait till they fall and hit the ground and then you can go pick them up. Don't try to catch them. That works really well if you're trying to buy, Tesla stock, and it takes a 200 point drop, goes from 420 to 69, and you can go in and buy it up, and you're like, all right, it's hit the bottom. Let's go. Commercial real estate has scarcity. There may be only one building that is going to sell in your downtown once a generation. And so if you haven't done your homework on that, you haven't researched it, when that window does happen, it may be so small and so short that you miss the opportunity.
That's interesting to think about, and even the thought of, hey, this building, maybe you have your eye on, maybe only transact once in a generation or lifetime, but missing that opportunity. How do you move forward, hoping that, or I guess with better understanding that you don't miss the opportunity?
Like I said, putting together a team, getting prepared. For me, oftentimes I'm an outsider to the market. I'm not on that inner circle. So having more information is my kind of superpower, determination to get the absolute most information that I can possibly have. Sometimes that's a negative, like you're going to find out things that you don't want, that other people are going to overpay because you're like, oh my gosh, but that could be a benefit, is that you avoided a potential disaster or buying something that was problematic. And so information. And then it prepares you to create those action items. Because and especially for like what you're talking about, real estate syndications, when you're raising money from outside people, there really is essentially putting trust into you, into a story of the future of what it's going to be. And so you have to be able to convey with a certain level of confidence, I hope a level of sophistication, but something that you're conveying to these people that you're raising funds from is that the future is better because of X, Y, and Z. And then when you have that information that you can put together and it's in a concise and consistent order and says, here's what's happening, here's why this is going to be different, and this is how the futures, and this is how I'm going to return your money, and this is why I feel confident in that X, Y, and Z. Again, I think most people can understand that it's difficult to predict the future. Many of our deals, we did not underwrite any epidemics. We had no pandemics into the underwriting, and obviously there was a global collapse, or at least a pause button. I thought there was going to be a whole lot of distress. And it turns out the government printed $20 trillion and all real estate tripled in value. So it's like, man, that kind of went the other direction. Sweet.
Yeah, some of those things, there's no way to know for sure, right? I mean, you do have to make your best judgment and move forward. Sounds like that's what you did. I don't blame you one bit. But, I like how you talked about you said having more information is your superpower. And I think, the knowledge is power, right? Ultimately. And, you talked about, and actually, you and I briefly discussed your due diligence course, that you have, and you talk about, the research, the level of research that needs to be done. And, speak about that level of research, maybe, and maybe some things that help you to gain that level of information that we all need before buying, in a new market.
Well, I think one of the key things is that in real estate, and I'm going to compare this to the stock market, is in real estate, you have a free option. And so what does that mean? So in real estate or in stock market, you can buy an option and I can exercise the price at this future valuation, or I can buy it and strike at this, even if it's worth twice as much money. And that's how you make profitability. In real estate, when you put a property in escrow, essentially what you're trying to do is eliminate all of the potential variables of screwing yourself up and so the due diligence becomes very, very important to eliminate the risk of this deal. I see a lot of people that jump into deals and then once they get it in escrow and they're like, great, and now let's just close. And they close and just hope and pray that nothing bad comes up into the future. And it's like, no, you're thinking of this the wrong way. This period is a very hyper-focused time in which you're trying to blow up this deal to find out all the variables of the things that potentially could go wrong that you now control, that you now have the opportunity. Free is kind of a quasi term because you're going to pay for inspections. You're going to pay for engineers. You're going to pay for travel out there. You're going to pay for people to check out those things. But you have a $10 million building in contract. You do tens of thousands of dollars worth of inspections and stuff. You don't like the deal, you can just walk away and you get your earnest money back. You get your other things, and you essentially have a free option on real estate. And so, like you said, I just put together a net lease due diligence course, and I'm calling it the Don't Go Bankrupt net lease course, because people are just randomly aping into these deals. They're never visiting the state. They're not physically walking, or driving around the neighborhoods. And so I have a checklist, a 72 item checklist that I go off of. And the reason I use a checklist is the same reason that a pilot uses a checklist or a surgeon uses a checklist, is because the downside risk of a surgery going wrong or a flight going wrong is people die. This is like, you're not going to die if you buy a bad real estate net lease deal, but you may feel like it. It may be years and years of misery trying to unwind or paying into a crappy deal that you bought because you didn't do a few things on a checklist. And so that's what I kind of walk through is here's what we, do during that time period. And again, it's not for me to be able to remember every single thing that you do. It's a checklist. How can, you do this consistently over and over and over again is having a system in place. And this is where some of the other things I brought up into the book is I became a millionaire before 30 and I lost it all. Mm. The subprime meltdown. I'm sitting on a street corner crying, dear Lord, can I be worth no money? Because I have a negative net worth and I want to start over at zero. Wouldn't that be awesome? Take that and then use some of those lessons, because I didn't have systems like James Clear, Atomic Habits. You default to the level of your systems. It's great to set out a goal for a direction, put together these systems. Those are some of those lessons learned that, I had to go make some of those mistakes. And I hope that I can convey out there to others is don't make the same mistakes I did. They're effective teachers, making mistakes, but true wisdom is using other people's mistakes and knowledge and then skipping over those.
I love that quote. You said that's out of Atomic Habits. You default to the level of your systems.
Yes. So it's goals are great for winning once. Systems are for repeated and predictable success. And so what it means is that just like willpower, your goal is kind of like willpower. You can grunt towards this, doing it one time. But then if your systems, or there's no system, I had no systems. And so I defaulted to laziness. I defaulted to not effectively repeating that success. What does that do? Well, if you're putting together a syndication, do you have a marketing team? Do you have KPIs for your investor relations person? Are you consistently reaching out and communicating to your investors? Do you have consistent content from a blog or a podcast or other things that are creating and bringing in new people into your world that could potentially invest into your deals? All of these things matter because they're all systematized. And then it's just a matter of, scaling that.
Give us, maybe some crucial one or two systems that you've put in place that have just helped you to scale, helped you have to go to the next level that maybe you see others that just do not have.
Well, I think it's probably, I wouldn't say others don't have. I think it is I'm slower to learn. And so it was doing the book, because that certain things is, I told you, and this is, when you put together a syndication, you're trying to build up a level of trust with someone. And that oftentimes takes many touch points until someone feels like, hey, I like this person, or I like the way that they think. They conveyed appropriate professionalism. And so a book was one of the start of this. And so when I thought of this is how can I help convey this out here to more people? And my biggest challenge was obscurity. I can be the smartest person on planet Earth. I could have the greatest idea, but if I just sit alone in my office and people, they're not going to find that. And here's one of the things that years ago I discovered. I said, the greatest invention of mankind. What would you think the greatest invention of mankind is?
The wheel.
The wheel. The wheel was not used as a wheel for several thousands of years. It was used as a pottery wheel. Nobody decided to put it up on the thing and make it a wheelbarrow or make it a cart or something like that for thousands of years. So the greatest invention of mankind was not even used as a wheel. And so what it is that you need to put that out and project out into the world. So for me, that was the big thing is I just thought if I, am really good at putting together all this collective information, people will just find me. They'll just find my deals. They'll just find the way they'll randomly walk by on the street and be like, hey, Jake, do you have a multifamily deal in a Sunbelt region that is delivering a 15% IRR or greater? Excellent. Here's my money. The reality is that doesn't happen. And so I had to put together those systems to amplify that, to create them, to show what I'm working on, putting together a podcast, communicating, going out and talking to other people like you, talking to like-minded individuals and sharing what I'm doing and how we can collectively help each other.
Jake, do you have any predictions? I mean, from what you've learned, any predictions for the next 6 to 12 months in the real estate market?
It's going to go up. It's going to go down. It's going to go left. It's going to go right. It's really interesting. I believe we have an undersupplied housing, or residential units massively. You dive into the details of this. In 2007, 2008, there was about 4 million too many homes, too many residential units, apartments, houses. They'd overbuilt, the country. And somebody looked around and said, oh my gosh, we should not have built this many apartments and houses. And the market crashed. They've been underbuilding the market's demand for now 15 years. And so there's net about 1 million units a year that we need just from population increase and immigration. We built 500,000, 600,000, 700,000. So, but it eroded away from that surplus, and we got to a equilibrium in 2012 on that pricing. Well, if you've following real estate, 2012 is about when real estate prices started going up, up, and up. They were going down until that price, and then they started going up since 2012 and beyond. Well, then we have not been able to keep up. And so we're on the opposite end of the spectrum right now. We're about 4.5, maybe 5 million residential units short today. Interest rates can go up, they can go down, they can go, whatever, but people still want to buy houses and are forced to buy houses and will. I mean, when interest rates were 18%, I was talking to my dad. He's like, oh yeah, my first mortgage, I was like 15% in the 70s. He's like, we bought a house.
And they were happy to get it.
Of course. And so it is like some people think, oh, if interest rates go up, the housing market's going to collapse. And I go, I don't think so. Now, does that put constraints and pressure on some markets? Home builders are struggling right now with construction costs. Our development projects, man, it's difficult with supply chain issues right now.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to look back, think about interest rates over time. And yes, my in-laws talk about their first home, very similar. It's like 15, 18% interest rate. And then my father-in-law will say, yeah, we were excited, right? I mean, to have it. And so it's neat to think about that versus where we're at now with these all-time lows that we're so used to or expect to continue. And so, Jake, how does that change how you move forward? As we think through interest rates, or do you have any insights around what you expect interest rates to do or how you're underwriting deals based on that?
So we baked in, some interest rates increase, maybe 150 bips, 200 bips on the outside, depending on when we plan on refinancing or getting to kind of stabilization. Most of our stuff is development or redevelopment. And so we kind of look at that and try to time. We're going to try to overshoot whatever that is that we think the market, just because we want to underwrite to a more aggressive or, a conservative underwriting. That's another thing that I see people do as far as making mistakes is they, bake out their pro forma on the best case scenario. Like they have to hit top market rents. They have to have, record low interest rates. They have to have, just all these things line up, 3, 4, 5, 6 different variables, and then they'll hit their deal returns. And the other way is like, what are all the things that can go wrong? And because probably 1 or 2 of them is going to go wrong. Just something is going to go wrong, or it's going to be something that we're not even predicting, like a pandemic. And then when we underwrite that, we have the ability and flexibility to weather that storm. So planning in higher interest rates, what does that do for our hold? Also coincidentally, baking in higher construction cost, and we're carrying on like some of that additional material. And that's a tough one to predict.
Yeah, of course. None of us actually know what's going to happen tomorrow or next month or next year, but we do have to make some predictions, right? And be as prepared as possible. And I just appreciate you being transparent there and sharing some of those things and how you look at it. What's your best source for meeting new investors right now?
Well, I would say things kind of like the mastermind, getting into meetups. People are meeting in person again. I think that there's been a lot of pent up demand of meeting. And obviously with we talked about inflation. There's real estate is a very good inflation hedge. We're building a hotel on the Riverwalk in San Antonio, and talk about an unbelievable inflation hedge is hotels. You're resetting the room rate every single night. Whereas, before, having super long lease terms was like the darling. I want something with 10-year lease terms with 2% baked in. Right now, other people are like, I don't know if I want a lease with 10 years with only 2%. It's 7% last year. Well, hotels reset that room rate every single night. So the fact that you can get out, do meetups, I don't know if there's some virtual, kind of things like that happening, but it seems like there are some of those. I would say just, getting out and meeting people has been the biggest and best, or at least the most productive. I think I can probably meet more people online, but those that can collectively connect in to our world has been less than those that we've met in person.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well. It's like that pent up demand for meeting in person. It's like, man, so many people want to get back to meeting in person. And I've loved being able to do that over the last month or so at different events. It's obvious that people desire that. And you think you hit the nail on the head too. It's like, yes, you can meet more people online or a higher number with greater frequency, maybe. However, it's such a different relationship that's built, right? I mean, it's so different when, hey, you can actually have that conversation face to face. Jake, what's some daily habits that you're disciplined about that have helped you achieve this level of success?
So I started putting more systems in place, and obviously, so I get up. I was gonna say, first thing, I brush my teeth. I don't do that. I go pee first, and then I brush my teeth. And then I do 20 ounces of water with lemon and Himalayan sea salt. I work out. At the finish of my workout, I read my daily or my vivid vision. So I have kind of mapped out in a statement of all the things in my life that I am wanting to manifest into the future. Reading the book Cameron Herold's Vivid Vision is helpful towards that. Creating a lot of specificity around what is it that you're wanting to achieve. Usually, and then I have, I take my kids to school in the morning and get off to work. The middle of the day in that work environment is somewhat, I wouldn't say chaotic, but it's just, I don't know what I'm going to do each day as I come in. That's kind of the reactive. And then I started doing blood work, tracking my blood work with David Sinclair's group Inside Tracker. And then that is also put in together a certain regimen of vitamins, vitamin D, some garlic oil, some other things like that are kind of missing. And then tracking sleep and getting into bed at an appropriate time, which is somewhat challenging with kids, small kids. You kind of got to wrestle them down to bed every single night. So we read the Bible every night. We do a puzzle or a quiz kind of thing on Amazon. We do our prayers, and then I call it Hudson Maverick Adventures. So I lay in bed with my boys and we talk about their adventures, and they alternate putting a sleep music song from Headspace, and then they talk about adventures until they fall off to sleep. And so then that becomes, I've bracketed my day with these little routines, and then I track my sleep of how much sleep am I getting? What is the quality of that? And those things have at least put together some of the systems that I can consistently have high energy and perform day in, day out, and adapt to a changing environment and whatever life is going to throw at me.
That's incredible. What's the Himalayan sea salt for? What does that do? Or like first thing in the morning?
Yeah, so the lemon juice and the sea salt it gives some minerals. Your body is dehydrated from sleeping for 7 hours, 8 hours. It immediately triggers your metabolism. The Himalayan sea salt is because it's an iodine that's missing, and Himalayan, it's not contaminated, so it's higher up in elevation, so it's more of a mineral. I don't know exactly.
No, that's incredible. I also drink quite a bit of water in the morning, very first thing, and before I have my bulletproof coffee. But I just wondered.
I do intermittent fasting as well, and so that's kind of like gets the body going. Yeah. It's everything moving.
How do you track your sleep?
The Aura ring. So it's a ring. So it comes up and it tracks. It's an app on my phone. And usually I'm checking that first thing in the morning, and it tells me how much sleep I got, the total time in bed, total sleep, the efficiency, my resting heart rate, restfulness, how much REM sleep, how much I moved, temperature. One of the things is like, were you too hot? Were you too cold? What is the heart rate variability? So it can also say, like, it can come up and be like, hey, something's going on. Maybe you're starting to get sick. And so then it's like, you should spend more time recovering or take it slower or easier. So.
No, that's incredible. I use an app. It's just called Sleep Cycle. There's actually a free version that seems, it's pretty cool, but that seems much more intuitive. I'd actually be wearing a ring or something that's tracking those things. I just interested in some of that myself as well. Jake, how do you like to give back?
Well, I try to help people getting into commercial real estate. That's been part of one of the biggest things. And actually why I created that net lease course was I had a lot of people reaching out to me, and I would say it was tens of people, not hundreds, but I have limited amounts of time in which I can appropriate or effectively do that. I am happy to help people out. Part of writing the book was a little bit of a write to the younger version of myself, young Jake, throwing down the rope to convey some mistakes that I've done throughout my life. I wish there was some of this information, or collectively, and now with YouTube, there is all that information. But now it's a fire hose of information. So the way that I can concisely share that out with others, then I try to do that. And then obviously I have some personal things that I do with the church, sure, giving back. But to me, that has been one of the most impactful things, to see someone not lose a bunch of money, or they were able to renegotiate a deal to better position themselves to, if something goes wrong in the future, they're just better positioned. That's been rewarding for me.
Jake, tell the listeners again about your course around due diligence. And it's such an important part of the process of buying real estate. I mean, you get that wrong, you just mess up. Like you mentioned, it could take years to dig yourself out of the hole that you could create when doing that improperly. How can they learn more about that course?
Yeah. So, we mentioned that catchknives.com is the main website. There's the course up there. And actually, I wanted to give back to you, or at least to your listeners. They can use a code. We're going to be really original here. We're going to call the code is Whitney. So they got to be able to figure out how to spell Whitney but I'll give them 50% off on that code. Normally it's $1,000 for that course. We'll discount that out by 50%. If somebody uses that in the next, we'll give them a couple weeks from the airing of this, that they can we give away a lot of stuff. The due diligence checklist, we actually go through a pro forma, building out a pro forma. What an example, a back of the envelope. And then which is interesting, we had one guy, he closed on one of his deals. He said he was kind of overwhelmed because he thinks he maybe did 20% of the things that he should have done before he's already closed. So he's on the other side of closing the deal, and he's like, oh no, I hope these other 80% of things don't go wrong. And so now he's retroactively trying to implement or check off those things off of his box. So I think like you said, very, very valuable.
Awesome. Jake, I appreciate your willingness to give back in that way. Yeah, so worth that. Just get the list alone, much less the other things that you mentioned. And having you on the show today, getting to know you a little better, hearing a little more about your story, millionaire before 30, losing it, obviously coming back and putting better systems in place. Sounds like just appreciate the transparency, the willingness to share from your losses and experiences, and now how, what you're doing now. But just I love some of the quotes. You default to the level of your systems and the goals. Goals are great for winning once, and with it, like systems are there to repeat the success. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So goals are great for one-time success, and systems are for repeated and predictable success.
Yeah. I love that. So Jake, pleasure to have you on the show. How can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you?
So the main platform is catchknives.com. So, and that's where you can access the course. You can get on our mailing list. So you're going to see our blog or content. You can order the book on there. We're putting, more and more things collectively through that Catch Knives. I'm most active on Instagram at jake.realestate, where I communicate out there. I'm sure there's through that catchknives.com, you can find YouTube channels and other things that exist out there. And then our company website, harris-bay.com.
Thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. Please subscribe and share it with your friends. We want to help you become the passive investor you've always wanted to become, but also the operator you've always wanted to become. We want to be the number one resource for your real estate investing journey. But go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can start investing in real estate today.